Hi everybody, I'm an addict. My name is Leah. And I'm a grateful member of Narcotics Anonymous. First of all, I'd like to thank the Convention Committee, the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous, for asking me to say something, carry this message of recovery. I'm very grateful. It's a gift to be able to speak at a world convention, a celebration for Narcotics Anonymous. Thank you. Boy. I need to tell you right off the bat that the last couple of months of my life have been something that I have feared my entire recovery. And it's very new for me. It's very difficult to talk about because I'm very confused and I'm very emotional about it. So I'm not going to dwell on it because I'm not going to stand up here and slobber to you because that's where I am with it. But 2 weeks ago, my father passed away after a long illness. And what I'd like to tell you is through a loving God as I understand him, the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous and a loving fellowship of which without you I would have never made it. I'm making it one day at a time, and the last 2 weeks have absolutely flown by. I'm here to tell you life does go on even though it hurts like hell. And that's enough of that. A little bit about where I come from, simply because I must remember it. I don't know if I was born an addict. It really doesn't matter. The only thing I can tell you is once I picked up my first drug, an addict was born. And the funny thing is that I was told, well, what's a nice Jewish girl like you doing this? And I didn't know. It seemed right at the time. But prior to that, my existence in this life was that of a fairly normal childhood. I was raised by people much older than myself. I'm adopted, and I was adopted at a very young age, 5 days old, and found that out purely by accident. And as a result of finding out that someone gave me away, I lived with the feeling in my gut that something was terribly wrong with me. What did I do that was so terrible? And that's how I lived my life. And because I was so terrible, I must have been, someone didn't want me, I lived with a feeling of rejection and a feeling of abandonment, or fear of abandonment, and a fear of lack of acceptance. And I lived with that knot in my stomach my whole life. And I was raised in a good home, and I went to nice schools, and I even went to camp. They tried to give me piano lessons. That didn't work. I practiced 15 minutes before the piano teacher came and said pass. And they tried to give me ballet lessons. That's ridiculous altogether. And they tried to give me culture, and they tried to give me love, and they tried to give me all these things, and they spoiled me absolutely rotten because they gave me things that not only that I needed, but they gave me anything I ever wanted. And when I asked for something and they didn't give it to me, I had a tantrum. And because I'm an only child, the focus was entirely on me. I think, being that they were so much older, that was necessary for them. But that's them. My reaction to how they cared for me was not as I understand it today. I couldn't accept love. I didn't know what it was. I felt I was being smothered. And I only wanted to be happy, so leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. Well, I'm standing here in front of you to tell you, wrong. I didn't know what I was doing. When I found my first drug, it took all that fear of being different, of feeling like an alien on this planet. It took it away. And I became a daily user from the time I picked up until the time I put it down. I don't remember ever drawing a clean breath for 16 years. Everything that our literature talks about, I have experienced. I compromised myself, my soul, and anything you had to get what I needed to get to feed my addiction. And because I had a disease and didn't know about it, the disease progressed, and eventually I came running into directly my drug of choice, and that was that. I found heaven. And nobody was ever going to hurt me again, because I found something that made me feel like the king of the mountain. And I followed that drug directly into the toilet. I thought I was having fun. One thing I've come to terms with in this program is that I don't really like to do anything that becomes a chore. And as soon as that became a chore, I didn't want to do it anymore. And I couldn't stop. And I tried to stop. And I couldn't stop. And I tried every way I could to stop. I tried psychiatrists, and I tried hypnosis, and I tried acupuncture, and I tried the clergy of all denominations, and nothing worked. You see, I was trying to do it by myself. People would tell me, well, you have to learn how to cope. Well, sure, but tell me how. I knew how to cope my way, so I continued to cope my way. And 16 years of active addiction brought me to my knees and to an emotional bottom, because physically I had been living with what I had been living with for years, and I changed drugs and I tried different combinations and nothing worked. So I had resigned myself to the fact that I was who I was, and that's the way the dice fell, and that was the way it was. By the time I got to Narcotics Anonymous, I had experienced jails and institutions. Spiritually, I was dead. I didn't believe in a God. I had heard about it when I was a kid, but the kind of God that I was taught about, I didn't want any part of, because it was a very angry and revengeful type of a God. I remember as a kid my mother always telling me, if you don't do this, or if you do this, God is going to punish you. I never heard the word loving go in the same category with God, ever. And I found a loving God in this program, and that's the only reason I'm standing here. When I came to Narcotics Anonymous, I had been beaten down to the point that I had no game left. I was tired. I was tired. I really believed I was crazy, and I didn't think that drugs were the problem. You see, without these drugs, I was definitely going to step over the edge. And temporarily, these drugs kept me somewhat together. I didn't know that I couldn't function. I didn't know that I had no values. I didn't know I had any convictions. I didn't know that I didn't have any principles. I didn't know. I thought I was okay. It was you and everybody out there that was responsible for the problems that I had. If the police would leave me alone, and if the judge would leave me alone, and if my parents would certainly leave me alone, and as a kid, if my teachers would have left me alone, if everybody would have just left me alone. Well, they did. Eventually, they did. And I was left with me. You see, my mother passed away in '77, and that was it. My family didn't want to hear it. The doors were locked to me. I had gone through 2 marriages that really weren't anything to write home about. I got married for the wrong reasons, and as a result, the only thing I knew how to do was destroy, because that's the nature of my disease. And I had all of these things that I had done and places that I had been, and I had nothing to show for my existence on this planet but one big fat goose egg, a record, and a habit. That was it. And I didn't have anywhere to go, and there was no one that I had to turn to. And I remember one night in desperation crying out, "Somebody help me." And I went to the clinic the next day, and I had a guy tell me that I could detox on the clinic. No, I couldn't. I had to be locked up, because if you took it away from me, I was going to become an animal. So I went on the best I could, and eventually God did intervene in his divine wisdom, and we had some riots in Miami. Now that may sound a little bizarre, but it was divine intervention for me. And because I had to go where I had to go into the neighborhood where all the animosity was happening. And that's where I hit my bottom. Because at number one, I had no business in that neighborhood. And as a result of that, the locals in the neighborhood let me know that. And the next day I went to the clinic. I said, that's it, I'm through, I'm off. And then I went to my father's house and I asked for help, and it's the first time that I ever asked for help, really asked for help, and meant it from my core. And he said, sure, you want help? I'll give you help. And he put the phone outside the door and shut the door and said, you got drugs? Now get help. Bye. And there I was again, face to face with me and the telephone. So I called the only place that I had left, which was the clinic, and through a series of referrals, I wound up in a detox. That particular detox, like many others, did for me what I couldn't do for myself, and that was to help me detox. But the greatest gift of all that they gave me was the message of Narcotics Anonymous through an H&I meeting that a man brought in that told me all about me. And he put labels on feelings that I had that I didn't have the vocabulary for. All I knew how to do was cuss. But he told me about me, and it amazed me because there was something inside of me that told me this man was not kidding. He had been there. I wasn't sure he wasn't still getting loaded, but I knew that he had been there and that there was someone talking about me, and openly. And I had, for the first time in my life, a flicker of hope. And he told me that I had a disease. And I felt a mixture of relief and the shock of, well, what kind of a disease are you talking about? Okay. When I found out that the disease was treatable, and it was through total abstinence that it could be treated, then I really felt relief. And I had a whole lot of explanation as to why my behavior was so absolutely insane. Because my behavior was insane. The only emotions I ever remember feeling was rage and self-pity. And because I was so deep in my own self-pity, anytime the family members looked at me with pity on their face, I wanted to slap them. Don't pity me, because I was so full of this sick pride. Just don't pity me. Nonetheless, they did. Every time I saw them, you know. So I stayed away. And the isolation was another factor of this disease that brought me to my knees, because I'm really a people person, and I had nobody at the end of my addiction. So when I found out that I had this disease, I was able to come to an understanding that it's treatable. You know, I'm not stupid. I'm only an addict. And when it was explained to me that I had a disease and that I wasn't responsible for having a disease, that was good. Because I felt such degradation and such shame and such remorse over the things that I had done. I really believed I was bad. I had no idea how sick I was. I was too sick to understand how sick I was. So because I had this disease and I found out that I wasn't responsible for it, I said, well, gee, that's great. The end of this punchline is that now I'm responsible for my recovery because I know I have a disease. And what am I going to do about it? What are you willing to do to stay clean? Well, I hurt bad enough, so I was willing to do anything that I had to do. I gave up a marriage. I gave up a whatever that was. But it was the pain of the letting go anyway, you know. Today I can tell you that that had to be the second best decision I ever made in my life. The first being to come into the program. See. But I had to be willing to do anything that was asked of me to stay clean, because my number one priority has to be that I maintain an ongoing recovery. Otherwise, nothing else is going to matter any damn way. See? Well, then I started to feel a little bit better. And then came the buts. But, I'll do this, but do I have to do it now? Okay. Yeah, you have to do it. Get a sponsor. Go to meetings. Get telephone numbers. And as a result, they sent me to a longer treatment center because I wasn't willing to give up anything. I wasn't willing to tell you who I was because I was afraid if you found out the truth, I was either going to go to jail, go to a nut house, or you'd hate me. And it was okay if I hated you, but it was absolutely imperative that you didn't hate me. I had to have your acceptance. So I went on to this treatment center because I had to become willing to do something another way than I was doing it. And I had to become willing to listen to somebody beside my own head. You see, my own thinking is what brought me into that spot. So I came to terms with that because I saw the handwriting on the wall. I had tried time and time again, and it was just obvious to me. It became very obvious. The logical thing to do was to do something differently. So I went to this place. I couldn't wait to come home because I knew that there was a few Narcotics Anonymous meetings in Miami, and I couldn't wait to get home, but I was very afraid that the people that I had met already were going to be gone someplace. I was never going to find them again. Well, they weren't gone. They were still at the same meeting, and there was a handful of us getting clean down there, and we were helping each other. There was 5 of us, 6 of us, I think. And by the time I came home, there was 15 people in the room, so the meeting had grown, and I was gone 4 months. So something was happening. But see, I felt that the first meeting of Narcotics Anonymous that I went to. There was something happening there. And I was asked to go other places, and I went other places because I figured, let me do what I'm supposed to do, let me not fight this thing, and guilt got me. And I found out that I don't need to go other places, that there is recovery in Narcotics Anonymous, and I get what I need in Narcotics Anonymous, and I've never been anywhere else in the last 5 years other than Narcotics Anonymous, and it's the grace of God and you people and these 12 steps that June the 23rd I celebrated 7 years. Now I had to work the steps. And I remember the lady that I asked to be my sponsor was referred to me because the first person I asked to be my sponsor was a male. And the only suggestion the man ever gave me was to get a female sponsor. So he introduced me to a lady that was to be my sponsor for the first 3 years of my recovery. And I'm eternally grateful to her because she taught me what is Narcotics Anonymous and taught me what it is to live a life of recovery and to learn how to love another woman. And that's amazing because I didn't particularly like women. I didn't really want to have anything to do with them. I was one and I knew what I was capable of. So, you know, and I used to love to play with the boys. I still love to play with the boys. My sponsor screams at me, get in the kitchen and pick up what you have to pick up and stop sitting with the boys. Do something. So I still do that. But women today are my best friends. The women are going to save my life in this program when life needs saving. You men are wonderful. I love all of you. But you can't help me because there's other motives there. With me, anyway. I can't speak for you. So I go to the women when I really want to share openly and honestly because a woman is going to call me quicker than a man will call me. Another woman knows my soul and knows when I'm lying, and that's what I need. I'd like to talk a little bit about sponsorship because I believe it's the heartbeat of Narcotics Anonymous. There are many times when I don't want to share with my sponsor because my pride and my ego will tell me, I can handle this. I have tools today. I've been in the program long enough. I've heard everything I'm going to hear. I'm clean long enough. You know. Well, I'm here to tell you that the last few weeks, prior to me calling my sponsor, I was ready to tear somebody's head off. There was an anger in me and a rage in me that was very familiar but very uncomfortable. And when I finally called my sponsor, the words that she said to me were things that I needed to hear that people were afraid to tell me. That's why I call my sponsor. Because when the going gets tough, my sponsor loves me enough to run the risk of me telling her whatever it is. But she's going to tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear. Because my sponsor is committed to helping me help God save my life. See? I sponsor ladies in this program that not only are they my dearest friends, they're sisters to me. I can share with them, and the funniest thing is they give back to me. That's not funny, it's the beauty of the whole thing, is what they give back to me, what I've tried to share with them, and that's how it works. And I sponsor ladies out of town. My sponsor lives 3,000 miles away from me, and I'm here to tell you that the hand of God reaches around the world, and you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to go anywhere else. And the reason my sponsor is 3,000 miles away is because there's no one else in my neighborhood that can sponsor me. And because I want to stay in Narcotics Anonymous, I'll do what I have to do and go anywhere I have to go to get Narcotics Anonymous.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you.
Now about these steps. I asked my sponsor, well, when do I start to feel better? Well, when are you going to work the steps? Well, I read them. They were hanging on a wall. I didn't understand. So I was told to write about my powerlessness. I was told to write about unmanageability. I was told to write about a power greater than myself. What is insanity? What does sanity mean? I didn't have a clue. Okay. When I was asked to make a decision, I was asked, well, what does a decision mean to me? What does over to the care of mean to me? I had to write all these things. I couldn't make a decision on how to, there was 7 of us one night. We went to 14 different restaurants trying to find some place to eat. We changed our minds every time. After they set up the table, we couldn't make a decision what restaurant to go to. How in the hell was I going to make a decision to do this in the 3rd step? I didn't have a power greater than myself other than Narcotics Anonymous. So I made a decision to do it the NA way, whatever that was. And then I wrote a 4th step, and I wrote an autobiography, and I met Leah for the first time. And I found out that she's not so bad, and she's not as great as she thinks she is. I used to suffer a great deal from the need to be machete. And I found out that I'm really a mush. It's got nothing to do with machete. It's got to do that I was a scared kid, and I was afraid of life, and I built walls like the Great Wall of China. And brick by brick, they're coming down. And it amazes me how sometimes I'm absolutely so wide open that I have no control over how I feel or how I'm going to let you see it. This particular incident the last couple of weeks has showed me that I can't hide. I can run, but I can't hide. Because when something hurts so bad, there's no way I can cover it up. Because I can't save my ass and save my face at the same time. I wrote this 4th step, and I saw how I set myself up to feel badly about me. And I'm talking even prior to picking up a first drug. As a kid, how I felt about me. I was a sitting duck for addiction. And then it came time to take a 5th step, and I had to trust somebody. Oh boy. That was tough, because I trusted nobody, starting with my parents. I never got an honest answer from them when I asked about my adoption. So I learned how not to trust at a very young age. And because I knew the things that I had done, I couldn't trust me, so how in the world was I going to trust anybody else? Well, this woman that I told you about was the first woman that I was able to trust, because I heard her share in meetings and I heard her say things and I knew she was exactly like me. And so I took my first fifth step with her, and we really laughed a lot because everything I shared with her, she shared back with me, only in a different street in a different year. But it was so similar that it was almost spooky. And then my program stopped. Well, I had done enough. Here I was, I had poured out my guts. And my program stopped until I was about 4 years clean. And the reason I say that is because I couldn't stand it anymore. I don't recommend that for anybody. I recommend that if you are going to do steps 1 through 5, then for God's sake, go on with 6 and 7. Because I had all of this awareness from the first 5 steps, and I was aware of the defects of character. I had 2 assets. One of them was that I was clean. So that'll give you an idea of my self-opinion. And I created a path of destruction for the next few years that I really didn't think I was going to dig out of. It hurt bad enough that my sponsor came to town a few days prior to one of our regional conventions. And I was sharing with her some of the things that I had done, and I had felt lousy about them, and I really was like down and vulnerable, and she zeroed right in on me. I guess her experience is that now's the time, and she zeroed in on me and told me things that I needed to hear again, and I began a writing assignment that I really believed was going to be a never-ending saga, because it was writing about defects of character. And it took a long time to do that. But I needed to do that because I had all of this awareness, and awareness is great, but I'm here to tell you that awareness without action is absolutely useless. This is a program of action, and unless I'm willing to do something, it's not going to happen. And if I think I'm standing still, I'm going backwards. Because the only thing constant in this world is change. So I had, in spite of how badly it was fearful, because I believed I was giving up something. Sure, I was giving up arrogance. I was giving up lust. I was giving up impatience. I was giving up intolerance. I was giving up insanity. I was giving up doing the same things over again and expecting it to be different. I was giving up prejudice. I was losing. I didn't lose. One more time, my thinking got me here. I gained a whole lot. And you know what I gained? I gained peace of mind. I gained some self-esteem. I gained some self-respect. I learned how to love a lot more. I learned a lot. That's what I'm here to do today, is learn a lot. The moment I believe I have all the answers, I am through dealing. See, I can't afford to be too smart. My experience has been is that I've never seen anybody too stupid to make this program, but I've sure seen them too smart. And every time an addict goes out behind being too smart, they take a piece of me with them. You see, because I care today. And I never cared about anything in my whole life. But I care today. And that's a gift that God has given me, free and clear, no strings. I humbly ask God to remove my defects of character. He's moved some around a little bit, but they're not gone. You know, I'm still waiting. If it's any consolation to anybody else, I'm still waiting. I don't know if they'll ever be gone, but hopefully they'll be more in the background, and that's okay. If God wanted me to be perfect, then I wouldn't need him, so he certainly wouldn't do that. You know. I made a list of all those people when I found out that some of the people, it wasn't necessary, because some of them were included in part of the game, and the game was the game. But I made my list, and I proceeded to make amends. Some were well received, some weren't. But see, the beauty of this program is that because each step spiritually prepares me for the next step, the ninth step is in the order that it's in, so I am spiritually fit to take whatever their reaction is going to be. Because if my recovery is contingent on their reaction, and their reaction isn't what I'd like it to be, I'm going to hurt real bad. See, and I don't want to necessarily hurt real bad. Okay, I'm not going to set myself up to hurt real bad if I can help it. But I used to think I could come out of an amends looking good. No. I got humble a couple of times because I was humiliated a couple of times. The amends that was the hardest for me to make was the amends to my father, because when I made amends to him, he didn't want to hear it. All he would ever say to me, "Ugh, what you did. The things that you did." But see, I had begun the healing process of self-forgiveness, so it was okay. A funny thing, though, I hadn't forgiven him, but yet I expected him to forgive me. I mean, after all, I was clean. I wasn't stealing from him. I was even being somewhat civil, And I expected all these things. And my sponsor said to me, and I understand it today, it's a gift to God to make an amends. And I'll tell you, I fought her. I told her she was out of her mind. But I'm here to tell you that I really believe that today. And I saw it. I experienced it. I have no guilt. Verbally, the amends were never accepted. But for the last year of his life, I was there. With whatever he was going through, I was there. I was clean, and I was there. See, this man was my hero, my role model. I wanted to be just like him, because what he was doing in his life was exciting. He was always living on the edge. My mother was an attorney. Boring. But my father was cool. And I always wanted to be like him. And because we were so much alike, it was like always, it was like a battle of two bulls coming together. I know today that the reason it was like that is because the emotion ran so deep. There can't be that kind of anger and that kind of rage without there being that kind of love. See? And I'm finding out all kinds of things that I never realized before. But the relief that I have is the fact that I have been able to make my peace with him. And I never thought I would ever do that. That 10th step for me is a daily inventory. I don't write a journal. When I first got clean, I used to write a journal. I spot check it. At the end of the day, if I have bad feelings or I know something's sitting inside of me, I have to make that phone call and call whoever it is and say, you know what, I wasn't working my program and I was wrong. And I hope you forgive me. Because it's okay to be wrong. It's not necessarily easy, but it's okay. The 11th step is what gets me back on track. Daily, I seek the knowledge of His will for me. It's a difficult task sometimes to accept God's will. It's very painful. But because I have the faith in a loving God that no matter what happens, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's hard for me to meditate. I don't get quiet often. I don't know how to pray. I get really messed up with the thou dost, shalt, wilt stuff. So I talk to God and I sit and I listen. Sometimes I get an answer and sometimes I don't. But eventually it'll be revealed. The 12th step is what keeps me in Narcotics Anonymous, because my spirit has been awakened through the first 11. And I do the best I can on a daily basis to carry this message to the addict. I don't sponsor people that don't go to Narcotics Anonymous. I'm committed to Narcotics Anonymous, and I'm committed to this program of recovery. The principles that these 12 steps have taught me, I do the best I can to practice them. I fall short a lot, but I've learned how to forgive. I've learned how to surrender. I've learned how to accept. I've learned courage in this program, because it takes a whole hell of a lot of courage to stay here. I've learned trust. I've learned perseverance. I've learned willingness. I've learned about faith, and God, I have hope. Everything I have in my life today is a direct result of Narcotics Anonymous. 7 years of my recovery, I've been alone. I have a loving relationship in my life today, and it's working. I'm not destroying. And it's only because I've had the ability, through the grace of God, to work on Leah, that I'm able to shut my mouth and accept someone and love someone for exactly who they are, and not expect nor want anything different. And that amazes me. The people that I have in my life today are priceless, and I cherish them. And they know who they are, because they have been there for me when my disease said, "Leave me alone. Don't call me. Leave me alone." But they won't go away, and I'm forever grateful. The things that they were willing to do, to come with me, to travel with me, to do, it amazes me. The gifts that this program has given me, had I made a list when I first got here, I would have sold myself short. It's endless. When I was promised a life second to none, you didn't tell me a lie. You told me the truth. You promised me that I'd be happy, that I'd have joy, and I'd have freedom from active addiction, one day at a time. And so far, because of this program, that's exactly what's happened. I'm in this program for the duration. I came here because I had nowhere to go. I stay here because I don't want to go anywhere else. Thank you for letting me share. I love you.